2020 was not a great year overall, but at the very least we got some pretty good video games, I guess. Yeah, let's go with that. I mean, it wasn't perfect in the gaming world. We definitely had our fair share of disappointment, with some pretty anticipated games like Cyberpunk being a complete disaster at launch, and The Last of Us Part 2 being one of the most divisive games I've ever seen, ever. But this video isn't about what went wrong with gaming in 2020, it's about what went right. Generally speaking, I don't usually play that many new releases per year, but I played a decent amount of new games this year, at least compared to how many I usually play. It's still not a lot, but games are fucking expensive, man. And you know, it's the end of the year, the beginning of a new one, so I figured I might as well do what everybody else does and talk about my favorite games of the year. All the games on this list are games I've not only played, but I've also reviewed on my channel. So if you'd like to hear my more in-depth thoughts on a game, I'll leave links in the description for each video. So without further ado, here are my top 5 games of 2020. Number 5, Resident Evil 3. If I had played more games this year, Resident Evil 3 might not have made it onto the list. But I didn't, so it's on the list. Don't get me wrong though, I did enjoy my time with Resident Evil 3 Remake. I love the Resident Evil franchise, but I've never played the original RE3 Nemesis, so this was my first time experiencing a version of this game. I say a version because while I did like the game, it's not exactly the remake a lot of the fans of the original game were hoping for. The remake cut sections from the original game and the live selection system, which disappointed more than a few people. I can understand why people were disappointed, but since I never played the original, I didn't have any expectations for the game beyond wanting it to be good, and it was good. It was definitely a more action-focused Resident Evil game, a little more like RE6 than RE2 make, which I don't mind, but I'd rather Capcom stick to the more atmospheric and survival horror aspects of the franchise. There was also a multiplayer mode that nobody asked for included with the game called Resident Evil Resistance. It kinda sucked, and never really had that big of a player base, so I can't really imagine anyone still playing it. Yeah, I was right. But at the end of the day, besides some of the warts the game had, I liked the characters, the visuals were fantastic, the soundtrack was great, and the Resident Evil gameplay that I love was still intact. I'm excited for Resident Evil 8, but I don't want Capcom to turn Resident Evil into a yearly series. It's not mainstream enough like a Call of Duty or something, it's not going to work. And Capcom are also releasing another Resident Evil multiplayer mode included with RE8 called RE-Verse, because the last one did so fucking well. Please Capcom, don't ruin Resident Evil. I don't want to go through the Dark Ages again. Number 4, Gears Tactics. Spin-offs of long-running franchises don't always fare so well, and when Gears Tactics was first announced, that was my immediate worry, that it wasn't going to be up to par with the rest of the franchise. But luckily my fears were unfounded, as Gears Tactics turned out to be pretty great. It's a pure tactics style game with incredibly solid tactics gameplay and a pretty deep skills system that allows for multiple avenues of specialization for each unit. The game also ditched the standard grid-based movement system that most tactics style games employ, opting instead for a more free-flow style of movement that more closely resembled the traditional Gears of War games. In fact, it's quite astonishing just how well the Gears of War formula translates into a tactics style game. It transitions so smoothly that it's surprising that this hadn't been done before. The game does have some issues. The story and characters are kind of bland and forgettable, there's a distinct lack of mission variety, and while the combat is very compelling, it's really the only thing the game has to keep you interested in it from a gameplay standpoint. Other tactics style games have more layers to them, such as base building mechanics or RPG mechanics, but Gears Tactics doesn't have this extra layer, which led to the game feeling a bit repetitive by the end of it. Despite these complaints, Gears Tactics is absolutely worth playing for anyone who's a fan of the franchise or tactics games in general, and I really hope we get a sequel to this. Number 3, Wasteland 3. Wasteland 3 is the first CRPG I've ever played, and I picked a good one to start with. The game has very in-depth RPG systems, both in its options for character builds and the choices that players get to make throughout the game. You have a team of up to 6 different characters, 4 of which can be your own custom characters, allowing for some serious diversity among your squad. And I don't think I've ever played an RPG that offers so much choice as well as consequences for your actions taken in the world and narrative. The tactic style combat combat is similarly deep with a lot of different abilities, companions, and weapons to complement the RPG systems. The biggest issue with the game was its technical shortcomings, with very long and frequent loading times as well as numerous bugs and glitches and a handful of crashes that got in the way of the fun. But Wasteland 3 is without a doubt the best RPG I've played this year, and I'm excited to see what the next game could end up being like with the full weight of Microsoft behind In Exile from the start of development. Number 2, Ghost of Tsushima. I've been a big fan of Sucker Punch since I played the first Infamous game back in the day, and have been sort of puzzled by the lack of attention and recognition that their games have gotten ever since. But much like what happened to Remedy with the release of Control last year, Sucker Punch has finally gotten the recognition they deserve as being one of the premier studios in gaming. Ghost of Tsushima is the magnum opus of traditional open world design, polished to a mirror finish, so utterly sound in its vision that I struggle to see where this style of open world games can go from here. Every aspect of the open world formula that has been so widely used and overused during the last console generation has been tweaked and improved. The Guiding Wind system is the best implementation of the map marker system open world games have been using that I've come across, along with a slew of other innovative ideas that put a new spin on the traditional design of open world games. Apart from that, the game is utterly gorgeous. This is the most beautiful game I have ever played. It has a fantastic score, a great story with good characters, and an incredible, deep, and challenging combat system. Ghost of Tsushima is a wonderful way to close out the PS4 generation, and I cannot wait to see what Sucker Punch do next. Number 1, Doom Eternal. Deciding between my number 1 and 2 games of the year wasn't easy, as I just explained why I love Ghost of Tsushima. Both games are the top of their class, but while I can't definitively say that Ghost of Tsushima is the best open world game I've ever played, I can definitively say that Doom Eternal is the best first-person shooter I've ever played. Doom Eternal is a game that requires a lot of concentration to play well. There's a lot to keep track of, and the pace of the game never lets up. In fact, there were some days when I tried playing the game after work and thought, wow, I just don't have the energy to properly play this game right now. Doom Eternal takes the incredibly solid foundation that Doom 2016 laid out and turned all the dials up to 11. The music, the visuals, the story, and most importantly, the gameplay. Whereas you could more or less blast your way through the entirety of Doom 2016 with the super shotgun, Eternal demands much more from the player. You need to constantly be aware of and manage your ammo, health, and armor to be successful, and this resource management trinity is the crux that keeps the momentum of combat propelling forward. And what satisfying combat it is. The guns feel and sound amazing to shoot, the glory kills are as brutal as ever, and the enemies are even more plentiful and diverse than they were in 2016. Much like Ghost of Tsushima, I struggle to see where the hell, pun intended, id Software can go from here. How do you top something this good? Well, I don't know the answer to that question, but if anyone does, it would be id. This year, I hope to finish the Assassin's Creed retrospective series that I've been powering through for some time now, as well as play some new releases that I'm very much looking forward to, like Resident Evil 8 and God of War Ragnarok, or whatever it's going to be called. There's also the Mass Effect Legendary Edition coming out that I can't wait to play, as the Mass Effect trilogy is my favorite trilogy in all of gaming. I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who's watched my videos this year, and especially those who've left encouraging comments on my videos. They mean a lot, and I'm very grateful for your support. If you liked this video, please consider subscribing, leaving a like, and commenting about your favorite games of the year. Thanks for watching.